Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Unlocking Doors. I'm here with Michelle Castle. Today we're going to give you guys a market update of what we're seeing here in North Texas, so y'all stay tuned. All right, Michelle, so today we're going to talk about what's going on here in the real estate market in North Texas. Anybody who's been keeping up with real estate knows that things feel different. Mm-hmm. Things are different, especially if you're looking from 2, 3, 4 years ago, what we were seeing in North Texas. So with that said, let's get right into it. Where do you want to start?
Well, I have a lot of questions for you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, good.
Ask
you
away.
Ready?
Yes.
You're in the hot seat.
Yes.
All right. So I know right now, talking to sellers, there's that, at the beginning, you're listing their house, you're all excited, and then the house is on the market. And then you may or may not have showings right away. Like, what are you seeing right now for buyer activity?
So for buyer activity right now, I always let my sellers know the way your listing interacts with the market is we put it on the market. At first, you may get a wave of showings, and that's people who have been looking for something like what your property is, and they see this new inventory come to the market, so their agent's going to go show that property to them. So you might get a wave of showings. Maybe there's not a whole lot of buyers that are looking for something like yours. You may just get one or two. You may take a while. So you might get that initial wave. Then after your home's been on the market for a while, you're kind of waiting for new buyers to enter the market, for new demand to come take notice of your home, your listing that's on the market. And sometimes you're just kind of at the mercy of when a buyer has a need to move or a desire to move before you start getting showings from people who are already, from new demand that's entering the market. And so I think once you have an understanding of that, it kind of helps sellers realize how the market is interacting with their listings. Another way that your listing will appeal to the market, let's say you've listed it, you've got that new wave, you've got new buyers that have entered the market, they haven't made an offer. So really the market has seen your home and they've rejected the offer price. What that tells me is we need to be at a different price point, and then that means a price reduction. Once you drop to a new search criteria, you're appealing to a new buyer pool, and you kind of start the process over again. There's going to be those buyers who were looking in this price range that you dropped into. You might get another wave of showings, then there's going to be new buyers that enter that price point, and so on and so forth. So,
I mean, really, ideally, as a seller, you're like, I think we could sell our house for this because we've seen a house down the street a couple of months ago, and this is what they sold their house for, which really, as a neighbor, do you really know what they sold the house for? Because it's not like public record. All you know is what they listed it for, right?
Yeah.
But it's to me as a seller, price really matters in the very beginning.
Right, absolutely. Here in Texas, it is a non-disclosure state. So a lot of people, and I see this all the time, a lot of neighbors will, they'll see the house is listed for $500,000. They may ask their neighbor, hey, what did you guys end up getting? And they'll say, oh, we got $500,000. And it's very rarely the truth, especially in today's market. I feel like some sellers kind of have a little bit of an ego, and
they don't want to say I priced it wrong and I only got $450.
They don't want to say they priced it wrong and they got $450. They don't want to admit that they had to come down because they didn't take care of their home the last 20 years or...
Well, and I don't think what's factored in there too is what concessions were made, what they had to give after inspections, or how much in concessions they had to pay for the buyer to have an incentive to purchase.
Right.
Like, none of that is factored in. They just, I got $500 for my house.
Exactly. So I think there's a lot of ambiguity in talking neighbor to neighbor, especially when you're probably not getting the truth or the full picture from your neighbor who sold a couple months ago.
I always think so many of the buyers, and I don't know the percentage, but a large percentage of people are looking at it online.
Right.
So the pictures matter.
Oh, yeah.
Curb appeal matters because after you see it online, you're going to drive the neighborhood, drive by and look at the house. But how many sellers right now are you seeing that just want their house sold as quickly as possible and aren't willing to invest in what needs to be done to the house prior to listing? I mean, I would think that's a big deal.
Yeah. So everybody's situation is different. Some sellers are coming to us saying, I need this house gone. I can't do anything to it. Where do we need to price it? So we're going with that strategy of we're going to price it appropriately. knowing that it hasn't had, it's got deferred maintenance, it needs updates, it's got a weird pet smell, and they can't afford to do anything, but they also have to sell ASAP. So that's, we price those accordingly. Then there's some sellers that are able, I had a phone call with a seller today. We're listing at a higher price point, and they have a great property, by the way, and I'm super excited for it to come to the market.
Be watching your website.
Yeah, be watching themealsteam.com for that and our social pages. But it's a very unique property, but not so unique where it's like nobody wants it, Yeah. But they said we're wanting to go ahead and plan for this. We know it's going to probably be a month or two before we're ready to put it on the market. We want to paint the house. We want to, take care of some deferred.
It has that fresh paint smell.
Yeah, they want to take care of some deferred maintenance, which is really not much. They've taken care of the home, but there's things that you can do. And so they realize that in the price point that they're at, which they're going to be listed, I think just right under 1.1 million. But for the price point that they're at, they know that a buyer expects those things to be taken care of. If somebody's going to invest that kind of money, they don't want to feel like that homeowner hasn't taken care of the property over the last, 10 or 15 years.
So what are your thoughts about spending the money for staging?
I also had this conversation with that same seller. She asked my thoughts about staging. They have their home set up very nicely. I think she has kind of a natural eye for decor, and it's set up how they like it. They live there, obviously. So it's not like you're just in this big...
And they're not oddly using rooms with
exactly.
weird furniture.
Yeah. And my thoughts on staging, I think it's very powerful. I'm fixing to list a spec home that I built, and I'm going to stage it because I think it helps it show better. I think the photos are better, the video's better.
Feels like home instead of an echoey house.
Exactly. And so with staging, if you do have some of those weird rooms where you're like, you walk into it and you're like, what is this room? Or like, why is this laid out like this? If you have a stager that can go in and show purpose for that room, I think that really, really helps and is a very powerful tool. So that's something that, I highly recommend it if you've got a weird house, weird layout.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember years ago when it was a buyer's market. It's been a while since it's been a buyer's market like it is now. But decluttering also mattered. There was the advice of taking pictures, family photos off the wall, and just getting rid of the extra clutter.
Yes.
Is that a big deal again?
That is a big deal. And I think, so here's the main thing is when a buyer walks into a cluttered home, they have this feeling of like, it's dingy. It hasn't been taken care of. That's the feeling that they get. And they don't want to walk into a home and think, I'm fixing to have to pay what the seller wants. I'm fixing to have to pay an interest rate that I don't want. And I'm going to have to take on the problems that the seller hasn't managed over the years. That's the mindset that clutter and deferred maintenance gives a buyer, and it's huge. It could be a major turnoff for buyers.
Okay.
Yeah, so decluttering is a big deal.
So, the other thing that I think about too, from a seller's point of view, you're selling a product, right? You're selling a home, and knowing what your competition is. There's a couple of customers that I've talked to recently. They're in new subdivisions. They've only owned the home for a couple of years. Yeah. So their direct competition is the home builder that they purchased from just a couple of years ago.
Right.
That's hard because of the amount of money that home builders are able to give for concessions.
Yeah.
But even if you aren't in a new subdivision, I think knowing your competition is a big deal. But what do you do in those situations where you can't really compete with a builder?
And that's, that unfortunately is having to price according to what the market is willing to bring you. And I think you're right. A lot of homeowners that buy in a new subdivision, they love the sales rep. Like I love working with the sales reps. They're usually so great to work with, and most builders. And they have this feeling of like, oh, well, she's my friend. Like if she has a buyer, she might send them our way. Like I've had homeowners tell me that, like, oh, we know her really well. I'm like, I know you know her well. I know you had a great experience whenever she or he. But her
commission is made on the new house.
Yeah, when they helped you buy your house, they were your friend. Now they're your competition. And you have to realize that they can, with their forward commitments on interest rates, if a buyer uses a builder's lender, they can get a ridiculously low interest rate. And And that's pretty much the only way they're able to sell those homes, in my opinion. You know, there's got to be a trade-off somewhere. If the price is staying up in those neighborhoods, it's because the builder is able to offer those interest rates. And as a homeowner, you've got to understand that. And as a realtor, you have to understand that too. If you're looking at, well, you know, we're selling at the same, you know, just barely under what the new construction homes are, you may not realize, if you're not in tune with the market, or if you're a homeowner, that also means that they're getting major concessions to either buy the rate down or pay their closing costs, or probably both.
Upgrades or both.
Yeah. Or all of the above. Yeah. So that's one thing that you have to take into consideration. And, you know, there's a couple neighborhoods around Sherman that builders have dropped prices a little bit to move inventory. So if you bought last year or 2 years ago at a certain price point, and now the builders lowered prices a little bit, and they're offering those concessions still because they can't sit on the inventory, they've got to move it. You know, you have to be aware of that. And some homeowners just realistically, maybe they can't sell right now, or maybe it's not the best time for them to sell. Yeah.
And I know some of the subdivisions have almost built out. So a couple of years from now, the situation won't be the same.
Right.
If you could just kind of hold for a little bit longer.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a tough one, and there's really not a magic pill for that.
There's not. Yeah.
I mean, that's just really a very tough one.
I think if you are a homeowner in that situation where you have to move, and you had plans to move, or whatever it may be, and you know that you don't have the equity to sell because builders have dropped prices and you can't compete with their incentives. I think at that point, that's where you need to talk to somebody like yourself or me and really understand what all of your options are. Maybe there's some financing options if they need to restructure something. Maybe there's some... Or
maybe you keep that property and rent it out.
I was going to say, maybe there's you know, you can talk to my brother Colby with, you know, his property management company. He'll get you a great tenant in there. That way they're helping you float the, you know, cover your investment there. And I mean, don't just give up on it. Like, there's going to be options, and you want to talk to somebody that can give you all of your options, and you got to be strategic.
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing right now, is having a solid strategy. And for me, you really need plan A, plan B, plan C, because you just don't know right now. Yeah.
Yep.
Gosh, I think that was a great episode with a lot of information.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Well,
hope you agree.
Of course they agree.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all for checking out this episode of Unlocking Doors. If you have any questions, or maybe you're a home seller and you're thinking about how you can be strategic, we'd love to help out. Of course, whenever you sell your home and you're ready to go buy, Michelle's going to help out with the financing. But give us a call. Thanks for watching. Share it with a friend, and we will catch you on the next episode.